Mommy, Daddy has a girlfriend he kisses when you're at work, and they make naked hugs in your bed. My 4-year-old son's innocent words sliced through me like shattered glass, each syllable drawing blood from a heart I thought was safely guarded by 10 years of marriage. The air conditioner hummed quietly in our modest 2-bedroom apartment, barely masking the sound of cartoons playing in the background. It was Tuesday, my early day at the salon where I'd built a clientele over 6 years as a natural hair specialist. Those extra 3 hours off meant precious time with my son, while my husband worked late. Again. My Elijah, with his father's eyes and my stubborn chin, sat on my lap as I folded laundry on the couch. His small hands cupped my cheeks the way he always did when he had something important to say. Something he needed me to really hear. His touch was sticky from the apple slices we'd shared, and his breath smelled of juice. "What did you say, baby?" I asked, my voice somehow steady while my world tilted on its axis. "It's supposed to be a secret game," he continued, his voice dropping to that conspiratorial tone children use for secrets. "Daddy told me big trouble would happen if I told you, but I don't like games with secrets from you. The lady's perfume makes me sneeze." My world collapsed into those sentences. Time fractured. I could hear each individual drip from the kitchen faucet I'd asked Malcolm to fix 3 weeks ago. I could feel every fiber in the throw pillow my fingers suddenly gripped. My son's innocent face swam before me, waiting for a response, not understanding he'd just detonated our lives. "What kind of secret game, baby?" I managed to ask, my voice coming from somewhere far away. My training as a mother kicked in before my heartbreak could. Protect him first, fall apart later. The lady comes over, and they go in your bedroom and close the door. Daddy says they're having grown-up time and that I should watch TV loud. Elijah fidgeted with my necklace, the anniversary gift Malcolm had given me just 3 weeks earlier. "She wears sparkly shoes that hurt the wood floor." Daddy got mad when I told him that. Sparkly shoes. On my hardwood floors, in my bedroom, while my child sat outside the door. I pulled Elijah closer, inhaling the baby shampoo scent still clinging to his hair. 10 years of marriage crystallized into this moment. The increasingly frequent late nights at the office, the password-protected phone he never left unattended, the distant touches that had replaced passionate embraces. All the signs I dismissed because working mothers don't have time for paranoia, because Black women are strong, because marriage is hard for everyone, because. Did I do something bad, Mommy? Daddy said big trouble would happen if I told. His little face crumpled with worry, and something fierce rose in me, a mother's instinct stronger than heartbreak. I smiled at him, pushing everything else deep down where he couldn't see it. "You did nothing wrong, baby. Nothing at all. You can always tell me anything, and I will never be mad at you for telling the truth." I kissed his forehead, tasting the salt of sweat from playground adventures earlier that day. "This isn't your secret to keep, and Daddy shouldn't have asked you to." "Are you going to yell at Daddy?" His bottom lip trembled. Despite everything, he loved his father. "No, sweetie, Mommy doesn't yell to fix problems." I tickled his sides until he giggled, the sound like salvation. "How about we make those chocolate chip cookies we've been talking about?" We spent the afternoon measuring flour and cracking eggs, Elijah standing on his step stool beside me. I photographed his chocolate-smeared smile, documented this moment of innocence while my mind calculated and planned. Each laugh I coaxed from him was a deliberate act of motherhood, a shield against the storm I knew was coming. That night I bathed him, read 3 bedtime stories instead of our usual one, and sat by his bed until his breathing deepened into sleep. Only then did I allow myself to walk into the bathroom, close the door, turn on the shower, and slide down against the tile wall. The tears came silently at first, then in heaving sobs I muffled with a towel. Not just for the betrayal, though that cut deep, but for the casual cruelty of involving our child, of placing the burden of adult secrets on those small shoulders, for making our son complicit in his father's betrayal of our family. When the water ran cold, I stood, wiped my face, and stared at my reflection. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind. "You can cry, child, but make sure those tears water something new." At 32, with a salon chair I didn't fully own, and a degree I'd put on hold when Elijah was born, starting over terrified me. But staying terrified me more. I heard Malcolm's key in the door just past 11. I'd left evidence of our cookie baking visible, a domestic scene to greet his return while I pretended to sleep. As he slipped into bed beside me, I laid awake, memorizing the ceiling patterns while mentally calculating the cost of starting over. The smell of unfamiliar perfume clung faintly to his skin, detectable now that I was looking for it. In the darkness, I felt strangely calm. My mother always said a smart woman keeps receipts, and I'd start collecting mine tomorrow. Screenshots, bank statements, conversations with our babysitter, who must have seen this woman. Each would become another brick in the foundation of our new life, my son's and mine. And next morning, I woke before the alarm. Malcolm's arm was still draped across my waist, heavy with the weight of his betrayal. I slid out from under it carefully, not wanting to wake him, not yet ready for what conversations would come. In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror. Same face, same eyes, same woman, but everything had changed. "You good?" Malcolm called from the bedroom, his voice thick with sleep. "Just getting an early start." I answered, my voice steady despite the hurricane inside me. Big day at the salon. I moved through our morning routine with mechanical precision, brewing coffee, packing Elijah's lunch, laying out Malcolm's iron shirt. Each domestic gesture felt like a performance now, scenes from a play called Happy Family that I'd been cast in without seeing the full script. When Malcolm kissed me goodbye, I let him. When he said, "Love you, babe," I echoed the words back. My body went through the motions while my mind cataloged every inconsistency in our life together. The late-night texts he shielded from my view, the sudden business trips, the new cologne I hadn't bought him. "You look tired," said my first client at the salon, settling into my chair. "Everything okay?" "Just Elijah fighting bedtime," I replied, the lie sliding out smoothly as I draped the cape around her shoulders. "You know how 4-year-olds are. All day." My hands worked independently from my broken heart, twisting locks, applying treatments, massaging scalps. Between clients, I slipped into the bathroom to compose myself, pressing cool paper towels to my eyes to reduce the swelling. No one could know. Not yet. Knowledge was vulnerability. And I couldn't afford to be vulnerable until I had a plan. "You're quiet today," observed Miss Loretta, a 70-year-old client who'd been coming to me since before Elijah was born. Her knowing eyes met mine in the mirror. "Just focused," I said, but her gaze held mine a moment too long. "Whatever storm you're weathering, child, remember your roots go deep," she said finally, patting my hand. I nearly broke then, nearly spilled everything. Instead, I nodded and continued styling her silver crown of hair. At home that evening, I watched Malcolm with Elijah. How easily he transitioned from adulterer to doting father. How seamlessly he wore both faces. He built a fort with our son using couch cushions and blankets, their laughter echoing through our apartment. Elijah looked at his father with such pure adoration that my chest physically ached. "Join us, Mama," Elijah called, peering from the fort's entrance. I crawled in, positioning myself so that Malcolm couldn't touch me casually, as he often did. Inside that fabric cave, illuminated by the flashlight Elijah held, I watched father and son interact and thought, how dare you risk this? How dare you make me the one who will have to break his heart? Later, after Elijah was asleep, Malcolm tried to initiate intimacy. His hands slid around my waist as I loaded the dishwasher, his lips finding my neck. "Not tonight," I said quietly. Migraine coming on. He backed off easily, too easily, and said he'd catch up on some work emails. I watched him tap away on his phone, wondering if he was messaging her, wondering if she knew about me, about Elijah, wondering if she was just one of many. The questions multiplied like cancer cells. That night established the pattern for the weeks that followed. I became two women, the outwardly functioning wife and mother who maintained appearances, and the strategist working silently to secure her future. The division was exhausting but necessary. I cried only in the shower, where the water masked my tears. I screamed into pillows when the house was empty. I maintained my weight through deliberate eating even when food tasted like sand. I smiled at Malcolm's jokes at dinner parties and stood beside him in church, the picture of Black family success that our community celebrated. "You and Malcolm are such a beautiful couple," our pastor's wife told me after Sunday service. Such a testimony to God's design for marriage. I thanked her while bile rose in my throat. At night, I'd often find Elijah had crawled into our bed, positioning himself between Malcolm and me like a small guardian. I'd stroke his hair and wonder if, on some level, he was trying to protect me. Children sense more than we give them credit for. "Why are you sad, Mommy?" he asked one afternoon as we walked home from the park. "What makes you think I'm sad?" I deflected, adjusting his little backpack strap. "Your smile doesn't make the crinkles by your eyes anymore," he said, with the devastating perception of children. I knelt on the sidewalk, eye to eye with my beautiful boy. Sometimes grown-ups have big feelings they need to figure out. I explained, "But I promise you, no matter what, you make me happier than anything in the whole world." "Happier than chocolate chip cookies?" he asked seriously. "Way happier," I assured him, and the crinkle smile he mentioned returned briefly. Each day of silence, of pretending, carved something from me. Yet each day also strengthened my resolve. I was not just a betrayed wife. I was a mother protecting her child from the fallout of his father's choices. My suffering had purpose. It was the cocoon from which our new life would emerge when the time was right. At night, lying beside the stranger I'd married, I would silently recite my grandmother's words. "A tree doesn't make a sound when it grows, child. It just gets stronger." I was growing, silently, in the dark. And when I was strong enough, there would be no going back. 6 weeks into my silent suffering, my sister Yvonne noticed. We were at our mother's house for Sunday dinner, the weekly ritual Malcolm conveniently missed due to work commitments. I was washing dishes while she dried, our mother having stepped outside to water her prized roses. "Okay, what's going on with you and Malcolm?" Yvonne asked bluntly, hip against the counter. "And don't say nothing, because I've known you since you were in diapers." My hands stilled in the soapy water. Yvonne had always been my confidant, but speaking the betrayal aloud would make it undeniably real. The words stuck in my throat like thorns. "That bad, huh?" Her voice softened as she took in my expression. "Girl, talk to me." So I did, in my mother's kitchen, surrounded by family photos and the lingering scent of her famous mac and cheese. I finally released the truth. Yvonne listened without interruption, her face growing stormy as I detailed not just the affair, but how Malcolm had involved our son. When I finished, I expected solidarity, righteous anger on my behalf. Instead, she sighed deeply. "You should try counseling first," she urged, lowering her voice. "Think about your son." The suggestion hit like a slap. "As if I think about anything else," I replied, hurt bleeding into my tone. "Elijah is exactly why I can't stay. I'm just saying, divorce is a big step, especially for us. The us hung heavily between us. Black women, Black families, all the unspoken expectations. You know how hard Mom struggled after Dad left." "This is different," I insisted. "Dad left for another woman. I'm leaving because of another woman. There's a difference." "To the community? To Elijah?" She shook her head. "Look, just talk to Pastor Wallace first. Marriage counseling worked for Tamika and Devin." "Devin wasn't bringing women into their home while their child was there," I countered. But I could see my sister had already formed her opinion. That conversation was just the beginning. Once I confided in my mother, only telling her about the affair, not about Elijah's involvement, sparing her that pain. The floodgates opened. "Men stray, child," my mother said, kneading bread dough with more force than necessary. "The question is whether there's enough worth saving." "Would you have stayed with Dad if he'd strayed?" I challenged. She paused, flour dusting her hands. "Your father was different. He left us with nothing." Her eyes met mine. "Malcolm provides well. That counts for something in this world." At church the following Sunday, I felt the weight of observation. Word had spread through the family grapevine, and now the congregation's eyes tracked me with newfound interest. After service, Sister Jenkins, the elder's wife, cornered me by the refreshment table. "I'm praying for your family," she whispered, gripping my elbow. "Another Black family falling apart is the last thing our community needs. These young men need fathers in the home." I extracted my arm gently. "Thank you for your concern," I managed, though gratitude was the furthest thing from what I felt. The church ladies formed a prayer circle for my marriage without my permission. My phone filled with unsolicited advice about keeping your man satisfied and working through rough patches. No one asked what Malcolm had done. The assumption was clear. Whatever the transgression, the burden of forgiveness and reconciliation fell on me. My Aunt Bernice was particularly vocal. "You young women give up too easily," she declared during a family birthday celebration. "In my day, we'd understood marriage took work." "Did work include accepting infidelity?" I asked quietly. "It included recognizing that a two-parent home is worth fighting for," she shot back, "especially for our boys. You know the statistics, Ayanna. Black boys without fathers." "I know the statistics," I cut her off, my voice low but firm. "I also know that my son deserves to see his mother treated with respect." The cultural pressure extended beyond family. At the salon, where I'd finally confided in my business partner Kendra, clients overheard our hushed conversations and offered their perspectives. "You can't let a good Black man go," insisted Miss Darlene. "A 60-something regular. They're already an endangered species in our community." "A good man doesn't cheat," Kendra countered, coming to my defense. "All men cheat, sugar," Miss Darlene replied with conviction. "The difference is whether they come home." Even my closest friend Tasha, herself divorced, cautioned moderation. "Just make sure you're not reacting emotionally," she advised over coffee. "The single mom life isn't easy, especially for us. Daycare costs are astronomical, and the judgments never stop. So I should stay in a broken marriage because racism and capitalism make single motherhood harder for Black women?" I asked, stirring my coffee with more force than necessary. "I'm saying know what you're walking into," she replied gently, "and maybe consider what can be fixed." Only my grandmother, at 92, offered different wisdom when I visited her nursing home. She listened to my carefully edited story, her eyes sharp, despite her fragile body. "Your grandfather strayed once," she revealed, surprising me. "Everyone said I should forgive. That's what good Christian women do." "Did you?" I asked, leaning forward. "I forgave," she said, patting my hand. "But I didn't forget, and I didn't stay. Raised your mother alone, working 2 jobs. Her thin fingers tightened on mine. "Some thought I was foolish to leave a providing man. But you can't raise a daughter to respect herself if you don't respect yourself first." I held those words close in the following weeks, as the pressure to reconcile intensified. Malcolm, sensing my withdrawal, began a campaign of public affection and grand gestures. Flowers delivered to the salon, surprise dinner reservations, even volunteering at Elijah's preschool. "See? He's trying," my sister pointed out when he showed up at a family gathering with an expensive gift and practiced remorse. What none of them understood was that each gesture only reinforced my resolve. Each public display of the reformed husband made me more certain of my path. Their pressure wasn't weakening my determination. It was tempering it like steel. "You're being stubborn," my mother accused after I declined Malcolm's invitation to counseling with Pastor Wallace. Perhaps I was, but as a Black woman in a community that often prioritized keeping families intact over women's dignity, maybe stubbornness was exactly what I needed. With family pressure mounting and Malcolm's performative gestures increasing, I knew I needed more than righteous anger. I needed a strategy. My grandmother hadn't just left my grandfather on principle. She'd prepared meticulously, saving money from house cleaning jobs for 6 months before making her move. I would do the same, but with advantages she never had. First, I needed financial clarity. One Saturday, while Malcolm took Elijah to a basketball clinic, another recent Father of the Year performance, I spread our financial documents across the dining room table. Bank statements, investment accounts, retirement plans, property deeds, insurance policies. I photographed everything with my phone, then created a password-protected folder labeled Salon Business Plan 2025. Our finances were more entangled than I'd realized. Malcolm's income as an IT consultant significantly outpaced my salon earnings, and his name stood first on our mortgage. The consultation with a divorce attorney would have to wait until I had more leverage. My first practical step was opening a separate bank account at a different bank. I began diverting a portion of my salon tips there, explaining to clients that I preferred cash these days due to processing fees. It wasn't much, but it was a start. My freedom fund. "You're doing more late appointments," Malcolm observed one evening, scrolling through his phone while I checked on Elijah's homework. "The salon doing that well?" "Building my client base," I replied smoothly. In truth, those extra hours were spent researching affordable apartments, documenting Malcolm's absences, and consulting with a financial advisor I paid in cash. My strategy extended beyond money. I needed evidence. Not for myself. I already knew the truth, but for the inevitable moment when Malcolm would try to control the narrative. The woman with the sparkly shoes remained a mystery, but finding her identity wasn't my priority. What mattered was establishing a pattern. I purchased a small notebook and began documenting everything. Dates Malcolm came home late, times when his story didn't add up, occasions when money disappeared from our joint account without explanation. Each entry included the date, time, and any witnesses. It wasn't just about building a case for divorce. It was about arming myself against gaslighting. "I'm starting to think you're working too much," Malcolm commented one Sunday when I begged off family movie night, claiming exhaustion. "You're always tired lately. Maybe you should see a doctor." I recognized the tactic, subtly suggesting I was the problem, that my perception was skewed by some health issue. I smiled and agreed to make an appointment I never intended to keep. Technology became both challenge and ally. Malcolm's phone remained perpetually locked, but he occasionally used my laptop when his was charging. I installed keystroke tracking software that captured his passwords the next time he checked his email. Ethically questionable? Perhaps, but I considered it self-defense. With access to his email, the full extent of his betrayal crystallized. There wasn't just one woman. There were 3 over the past 2 years. The sparkly shoes belonged to Renee, a coworker. The others were Stephanie, a woman he'd met at a conference, and Danielle, a college ex he'd reconnected with on social media. Each relationship overlapped, each woman unaware of the others, or of his family. I forwarded the emails to my secret account, then deleted the forwarded copies from his sent folder. Knowledge was power, but revealing what I knew too soon would be a tactical error. The most difficult part of my planning involved Elijah. I needed to prepare him for change without traumatizing him or alerting Malcolm. I began reading children's books about different family structures during our bedtime routine. I asked gentle questions about how he'd feel living in a new place, framing it as curiosity rather than preparation. "Would you like having a bunk bed someday?" I asked one night after reading a story about a child with divorced parents. "Only if I get the top bunk," he replied without hesitation. "And if you and Daddy are there too?" His innocent assumption that we would all be together pierced my heart. I hugged him tighter, promising myself that however this played out, I would minimize his pain. As my evidence accumulated and my escape fund grew, I expanded my network of allies. I couldn't trust family members who might inadvertently tip off Malcolm, so I looked elsewhere. I reconnected with law school friends I'd lost touch with after dropping out to help Malcolm finish his degree, a sacrifice he'd conveniently forgotten. One such friend, Zara, now practiced family law in a neighboring county. Over lunch, scheduled when I supposedly had a salon training event, I outlined my situation without naming names. "You're doing this exactly right," she affirmed, sliding me her card with her personal cell number written on the back. "Document everything, secure your finances, and don't confront until you're ready to move. I've seen too many women act on emotion and end up vulnerable." I also befriended our apartment building's maintenance supervisor, Marcus. He was a grandfatherly figure who often repaired things Malcolm promised to fix but never did. When I accidentally mentioned Malcolm's late nights, Marcus revealed he'd seen him bringing women to our apartment during day shifts. "Not my business," he said, replacing our leaky faucet. "But my daughter went through something similar. If you ever need someone to change the locks on short notice, you let me know." His offer meant more than he could know. I thanked him with homemade cookies, careful to maintain plausible deniability while securing another ally. The salon became my command center. Kendra cleared the back office for me on slow afternoons, standing guard while I made calls to lawyers, realtors, and moving companies. I created a separate email address and gave it to Elijah's teacher and pediatrician, ensuring I wouldn't miss important information when the split came. Even my timing was strategic. I researched the optimal time to serve divorce papers. Wednesday mornings, when courts had shorter dockets and Malcolm had standing meetings he couldn't easily cancel. I planned around Elijah's school schedule, targeting his fall break when he could adjust to new surroundings without academic pressure. I investigated Malcolm's company benefits and discovered his upcoming bonus schedule. The timing of my departure would impact financial settlements significantly. Patience would literally pay off. By the 3-month mark, I had a secured rental apartment with first and last month's rent paid, a separate bank account with enough emergency funds for 6 months, copies of all essential documents, a detailed record of Malcolm's infidelities, a preliminary consultation with a divorce attorney, a child care arrangement with a trusted sitter for the transition period, a storage unit containing irreplaceable items I'd removed gradually, a support network unconnected to Malcolm. What I'd assembled wasn't just an exit plan. It was a blueprint for our new life. While Malcolm believed my withdrawal was depression or overwork, I was methodically dismantling the architecture of our marriage and salvaging the materials I needed. The night before I planned to make my move, I sat alone in our kitchen after both Malcolm and Elijah were asleep. I reviewed my checklists one final time, ensuring nothing critical was overlooked. My hands didn't shake, my breathing remained steady. I had transformed fear and heartbreak into focused action. This wasn't just about escaping a cheating husband. It was about showing my son what self-respect looked like in practice. It was about breaking a cultural pattern that placed marriage preservation above women's dignity. It was about honoring the grandmother who had shown me that planning trumps panic. Tomorrow, everything would change. But unlike Malcolm, who had carelessly gambled with our family's stability, I wasn't leaving anything to chance. The day I left unfolded with precision I'd only seen in heist movies. Malcolm kissed me goodbye that morning, distracted, routine, already mentally at work. He had no idea it was the last time he'd see me as his wife. I returned the kiss mechanically, while mentally checking off items from my final list. After dropping Elijah at preschool, with an extra tight hug and the promise of a special adventure later, I executed the plan that had consumed my thoughts for months. First, the movers arrived, not at our apartment, but at the storage unit where I gradually relocated our essential belongings. They would deliver everything to the new apartment by noon. Next, I made 2 bank transfers, one moving my portion of our joint savings to my new account, and another ensuring this month's bills would still be covered. I wasn't leaving Malcolm financially stranded. I simply wasn't financing his future deceptions. At precisely 11 a.m., when Malcolm would be in his weekly team meeting, I called his office. "Mr. Wilson's office, how can I help you?" His assistant answered. "Hi, Lauren. This is Ayanna. I need you to give Malcolm an important message when his meeting ends." "Of course, Mrs. Wilson. Is everything okay?" Her concern sounded genuine, making me wonder if she knew about any of his affairs. "Everything is fine," I assured her. "Just tell him Elijah and I won't be home when he returns today, and he'll find documents on the kitchen table explaining why." A pause. "Mrs. Wilson, Ayanna, do you need help? Are you safe?" Her question touched me. "I'm perfectly safe, Lauren. Thank you for asking. But it's time for me to help myself." After hanging up, I returned to our apartment one last time. I placed 3 items on the kitchen table. A manila envelope containing divorce papers meticulously prepared by Zara's colleague. A USB drive with copies of emails between Malcolm and his various girlfriends. And a letter I'd written and rewritten a dozen times until every word reflected clarity rather than rage. The letter wasn't long. It simply stated that I knew about Renee, Stephanie, and Danielle. That I knew he had brought them into our home while our son was present. That I had evidence that would make a judge question his judgment as a parent. And finally, that I was willing to discuss civil co-parenting arrangements once he accepted that our marriage was over. I didn't cry as I took one final walk through the apartment, checking that I'd missed nothing important. In the bedroom, I removed my wedding ring and placed it on his nightstand. Not dramatically, but matter-of-factly, like returning a borrowed item. As I locked the door behind me, Marcus, the maintenance man, appeared in the hallway. "All set?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Thank you for everything." "You take care of yourself and that boy," he replied. "My daughter's doing great now, by the way." Sometimes leaving is the strongest thing you can do. By 2 p.m., Elijah and I were in our new apartment. A sunny 2-bedroom in a secure building across town. I decorated his room over several weekends when he was with my mother, ensuring it would feel familiar despite the change. His favorite stuffed dinosaur waited on his new bed, along with a picture book about brave adventures. "Is this our vacation house?" he asked, exploring the space with cautious excitement. "This is our new home," I explained, kneeling to his level. "Remember how we talked about how families sometimes live in different places?" His little forehead wrinkled. "Like Tim at school? He has a mom house and a dad house." "Something like that," I confirmed. "This is going to be our home, and Daddy will have his own place too." "Why?" The inevitable question. I'd rehearsed this moment extensively with a child psychologist. Sometimes grown-ups need to live apart to be the best parents they can be. "But we both love you very much, and that will never change." The first call came at 5:43 p.m., exactly when I'd predicted Malcolm would arrive home and find my letter. I didn't answer. The second, third, and fourth calls went to voicemail as well. Only when Elijah was settled with dinner did I listen to the messages, each progressively more desperate and angry. "What the hell is this, Ayanna? Call me back immediately. You can't just take my son. This is kidnapping. I made some mistakes, but this is an extreme overreaction. Please, baby, we can work this out. Whatever you think you know, it's not that bad." The final message revealed his true character. "If you think you can destroy me like this, you have no idea who you're dealing with. I will take Elijah and leave you with nothing." I forwarded each threat to Zara, then texted Malcolm a single message. "All communication should go through my attorney from this point. Her information is in the envelope." That night, after Elijah fell asleep in his new room, I sat on our small balcony and finally allowed myself a glass of wine. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from family members Malcolm had rallied to his cause. My mother, my sister, my aunts, even our pastor. I silenced them all. Instead, I opened a new document on my laptop and began writing what would eventually become Reclaiming Dignity, a guide for women leaving betrayal behind. The words flowed easily, powered by months of strategic thinking and years of suppressed wisdom. If my experience could help even one other woman plan her exit with precision rather than panic, something good would come from this pain. Malcolm's campaign to reclaim control took predictable forms. He portrayed himself as the victim of an unreasonable, possibly unstable wife. He leveraged our church community's bias toward reconciliation. He made tearful calls to my family members, claiming he just needed one chance to explain. When those tactics failed to produce results, he switched to financial warfare, freezing credit cards I no longer used and threatening to stop paying the mortgage on the apartment I no longer occupied. Each move revealed his assumption that I hadn't prepared, that I was operating from emotion rather than strategy. He's offering full custody if you'll drop the adultery claims, Zara informed me during our 3rd week of separation. He says he'll give you the apartment too. I laughed without humor. He's offering what a judge would award me anyway, minus the public acknowledgement of his behavior. Decline. Malcolm's final attempt at manipulation came through Elijah. During their first supervised visitation, he told our son that mommy is being mean and won't let daddy come home. Elijah returned confused and tearful, asking what he could do to fix our family. That night, I held my son close, smoothing his hair. Sweetheart, this isn't something you can fix because you didn't break anything. Grown-up relationships sometimes end, and it's sad, but it's never, ever your fault. The next morning I called Malcolm directly, the first time we'd spoken since I left. If you ever use our son as a weapon again, I said without preamble, I will pursue full custody with supervised visitation only. You can fight me on the divorce terms. You can badmouth me to the whole church, but you will not put Elijah in the middle. Are we clear? His silence, then a subdued yes, told me he recognized the steel in my voice. In the months that followed, our divorce proceeded with less drama than I'd feared. Malcolm eventually accepted the inevitability once his attorney reviewed the evidence I'd gathered. The settlement included primary custody for me, a fair financial arrangement, and most importantly, a detailed co-parenting plan that prioritized Elijah's well-being. My sister came around first among my family, arriving at our new apartment with Elijah's favorite cookies and a simple, I should have supported you from the start. My mother took longer, but eventually admitted, you're stronger than I was at your age. I stayed with your father 3 years after I knew about his first affair. The salon became not just my workplace, but my platform. Women began requesting me specifically after hearing about my story, seeking advice on leaving their own bad situations. I developed a reputation for providing both excellent hairstyling and practical escape strategies. 6 months after leaving, I closed on a small house, just Elijah and me. As we carried boxes into our new home, I noticed he seemed pensive. What's on your mind, buddy? I asked, unpacking his dinosaur collection. Are you still sad, Mommy? His question caught me off guard. I considered my answer carefully. I'm not sad anymore. Sometimes I'm tired, and sometimes I miss how things used to be. But mostly, I'm proud of us for being brave and making a good life together. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. Your smile makes the crinkles by your eyes again, he observed, repeating his earlier insight with the child's perfect memory. That night, after Elijah was asleep in his new room, I sat on our porch swing and reflected on the journey. The revenge wasn't what I'd initially imagined in those first raw days of betrayal. I hadn't destroyed Malcolm publicly or turned our son against him. I hadn't slashed his tires or burned his clothes on the front lawn. My revenge was more powerful. I had reclaimed myself. I had shown my son that love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. I had demonstrated to my community that Black women's dignity isn't negotiable, despite generations of messaging to the contrary. The process had transformed me from a betrayed wife into something far more formidable, a woman who knew exactly what she was worth and what she would no longer tolerate. my business expanded. I began teaching classes on financial literacy for women at the community center. I dated occasionally, but only men who understood that my child interviewed them first. I maintained civil co-parenting with Malcolm, who eventually admitted that our new arrangement had forced him to become a more present father during his visitation time. Sometimes at night, Elijah still whispered to me, climbing into my bed with his stuffed dinosaur. But now, instead of revealing secrets that shattered our world, he shared dreams and hopes and silly jokes. "Mommy," he whispered one night, his small hand patting my cheek, "I'm proud of you." That moment, that whispered validation from the person who mattered most, was worth everything. It wasn't just revenge, it was redemption.